Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking time to be here and welcome to our lunchtime reading sessions. This is the final in-person reading sessions we will have for Campus Literature Week 2024. The theme of this year's Literature Week is crafting liberated words, and we're extremely pleased to have a lineup of excellent writers, essayists, journalists. It's a wide range of persons that are coming in today to speak, and I know that we are excited to start today's proceedings by introducing our first reader, Professor Barbara Lala. Professor Lala has taught and published on Caribbean language history, literary discourse, and early English literature. Apart from serving the university as public orator for many years, between 1998 and the present, she has published 6 novels: Arch of Fire, Cascade, Uncle Brother, Brown's for Tenure, 1000 Eyes, and most recently, just this month, By Such a Parting Light. Let's all welcome Professor Lal.
Hello. My narrator is a retired academic with 2 obsessions: family and narrative. Not me, but someone I can understand. And we find her in the midst of a catastrophe. So I'm going to read the epigraph and then a bit from the very beginning of the first chapter and a bit from the end. So the epigraph. Promise me that if one day when you wake up, you hear I'm dead, you will write my story. Promises to break or fulfill. Each lodges in waiting like a razor blade in the purse. When they fade from mind, they float free, slicing invisible through the air. We fumble on over the years, heedless of how we breathe them in and out. But what to do? Eventually, we are thankful just to breathe at all, especially now, when disaster lurks in that most basic of all instincts, to inhale. With the usual tearing of mental muscle, I avert my mind from the worldwide mayhem of stacked coffins and container morgues, and I duck behind the old mask of composure. Straightening the 3-inch stack of paper to fit flush with the far left corner of my desk, I grapple with my predicament while I can, for it is barely light, and the children are still asleep. The way ahead forks dark, and even the path that led here blurs behind me. A beam slants in between yellow-green joints of bamboo fading on my study drapes, and lights up today's page of my diary with its list that I shall never get through. Despite those famous time management skills, our nephew Francis asked a decade ago when I complained I wasn't writing as much as I had planned. Why? Perhaps because much ought not take form in words, let alone materialize in print. But so many conflicting voices inhabit my head. Aria, you write what you need to write. A colleague, Jenny Martin, scoffed at the idea of loyalty to anything but truth. Only I must get it right. True, yes, but also correct, fitting, decent. I write to make sense of it, to impose order on chaos. Yet now I'm at a standstill. Writer's block. Jenny had probed once when it had happened before. God knows how I let it drop. Her tone sounded a nice balance of pity and condescension. Perish the thought. I turned it aside rather than word my sense of being in strait with all that my other commitments had stemmed up. Years of academic work had forestalled my storytelling, the teaching, research on student matters, and the drone of endless circular meetings, not to mention the Roche family life. Let's hitch that on as if it teeters on the periphery rather than churning at the core, and as if regular people, and what others are there, sheltered in their private lives, immune from larger-than-life events, as if all that's heart-stopping amounts to nothing more than melodramatic intervention. Apart from the horrific nature of some ordinariness, there breaks in every now and then that lightning bolt of the unthinkable, of what would have seemed far-fetched had it even crossed one's mind. Only months ago, who would have pictured the worldwide sighing beyond our shores? A year ago, how could I have imagined my own intimate catastrophe? From out that blue sky, the outside chance smashes in, skewering private routines with slivers of some alternative reality. And my routines? I reach for them even in this torrent from which I strive to word life back together. Old loves torn away and new ones to keep afloat, even as something faceless and ravening circles outside. I've spent the past months anchoring routines back in for sanity's sake. Fiction is my machine for fighting pandemonium. Beyond the world of books, the lines beyond realism, fantasy, horror, soap, and sci-fi have dissolved. And so I shall write as I see fit, gathering mental tools and firing up the engine for transforming perplexity to understanding. Only now, this new tale, nothing to do with us, Joel insists, unfolds alongside me on that other desk that came to us from sin. An elegant writing table, yet chilling and pretentious in the new presence it has come to project among us, between us. For now, a marriage of over 40 years ends, and nothing essential is as it was. Although black ash from the fires that break out arbitrarily in dry season floats in, as it always has, and settles on the page. Lives coming apart, apparently because of lines on paper, carelessly left upon this other slim-legged desk, this desk on delicate lines, even more relentlessly than they etch the skin around my eyes and into my brain, they slice their way onto the page. How to stop these unspooling bylines, storylines, bloodlines, but also how to tamper with narratives already underway around you. And it comes when you wake up and wonder, could it all have gone another way? Less waste, time otherwise distributed. And if you open your eyes in the wee hours, these ponderings set on you savagely, piercing screams you had not seen yourself throw up. Was there blood? A flash and rending metal, a whiff of scorched flesh before silence and rushing dark. Oh God, to stop my mind plummeting, I swerve it onto another path, stop it crashing through emptiness in a long line, the long last plunge into the deep. I try to block such waking nightmares with thoughts of past years, but as those years return to me, they propel the narratives carving their way out. All are reset now against the havoc in the world outside, against the absolute requirement to create a complete world, an adequate universe inside these walls. And looping in and out of all these disparate plots runs the empathy for my only child, set off on a journey beyond our reach. What wouldn't I give to intervene in her story and have her locked up here too, back here, with us? Most of the tales that entice me are forbidden. And all because I forefeel the pang of wounding the very people most worth writing about. Even the odd expose of some fraud or injustice that deserves or calls for disclosure, even the most urgent investigation may do someone quite innocent an injury too great to be offset by what little good I achieve in bringing it to light. And one, this latest tale, elbowing out all the rest, might it destroy the lives of everyone I love, as he insists. And then mine will be worthless. Yes, of course, if I could, I'd turn aside this onslaught of words, memories, intentions, vows sharpened by years and circumstance, yet it all keeps hacking its way out. So, here I am, haunted by the books I must not write.
Thank you very much, Professor Lawler, for that very insightful and moving reading. I saw, as you were reading, I saw as a emerging young writer some of myself in those words. And you were talking about your craft and how you go about expressing what is inside people, which is what creative element is all about. As we move on now, I would like to introduce our second reader, Ms. Judy Raymond. Judy Raymond is a former editor-in-chief of the Trinidad Guardian and the Newsdean. She has written a parliamentary column for many years, as well as profiles and reviews of books, art, and film. She is the author of 4 non-fiction books, including a biography of Beryl McCreary, founder of the Little Carrick Theatre, published by the UB Press, and The Color of Shadows, Images of Caribbean Slavery, about the last years before emancipation. Her essays and short memoirs have also been published in anthologies. She has recently begun writing fiction, which to date has been published in 1 anthology and in magazines including Moku. Her short story, The Old Monsters, was shortlisted for the 2023 Brooklyn Caribbean Literary Festival Award for Writers in the Caribbean. Let's all welcome Judy.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am going to read you my one happy story. It's called Sign Your Name Across My Heart. Despite my name for artistry, which still pleases me even after all this time, I don't have a lot of clients, even though the ones who are satisfied with my work praise its elegant, practiced lines, the warmth of the colours, and the fact that they never seem to fade. Generally, because they're so pleased, these particular clients forget to mention that my tattoos, depending on the subject, may hurt more than others. So I get good word of mouth from them, and then other people come to me. I do the usual designs too: dragons, hearts wreathed with roses with mother across the centre, Ouroboroi coiled around wrists or ankles with their tails in their mouths, crucifixes, skulls, again with the inevitable roses, portraits, the emblems of retro heavy metal bands. Some ask for semicolons and cry while I'm inking them, but it's not the needles that hurt them. They get a big discount, though they don't know it. So do the ones who need something to cover scars on their wrists or their arms. Some want portentous Latin phrases that they've copied out for me. I point out the mistakes, and they disagree, but I ignore them. They can Google it again later and see I was right. I learned those long ago lessons very well, scratching my letters into a wax tablet propped on my knee on a wooden bench near the bank of the Tiber. Clients marvel that I can glance once at Arabic script and reproduce it perfectly after they've checked anxiously that it matches the phrase they've copied and printed for me. Where do you learn to read that? I just smile. Best not to tell them. In a little school outside the walls of the Alhambra before Ferdinand and Isabel came in the 1480s. I can do the facto, the German Gothic script, runes, classical Greek. They look at my rows of clean, ugly plastic bottles and ask what's in the ink. Oh, don't worry. Modern tattoo inks are perfectly safe. It's all regulated. That may be true. I don't know. I think of my round-bottomed vials of green Roman glass, stoppered with corks, glowing with cinnabar, raw ochre, indigo, oak ash, turmeric. I decant them nowadays into the hygienic modern bottles. It's the words I say over them that keep my clients from harm. Also, I tell them what they can do to reduce any pain or risk of infection. In this part of the world, the New World, as the Europeans call it, though it's been here just as long as theirs, and has certainly always been just as much of a world, I tell them to rub their new inking gently with a piece of aloes, or drink lemongrass tea. Occasionally, if I feel they want something that really tastes like medicine, I suggest Zevapik tea, bitter like tobacco. Some of them smile at these old-time remedies, and no doubt go and tell their friends about this little old auntie they went by for a tattoo, and who they now suspect is an obeah woman. They speak more truth than they know, though obeah woman has not always been the word I would use. Sometimes, in a pause while I'm switching needles, someone will ask me why it hurts so much. How deep those needles go? Only a millimeter or two, I say, though the real answer is, this name is being written on your heart. How deep is that? Then there are the people who come in but don't stay long enough to become clients. Those who want to carry forever the name of their current girlfriend or boyfriend, brand new husband or wife, and are surprised or offended by my reaction to their perfectly reasonable requests. I don't blame them. They'll be the ones who warn other people about me. You sure you want that name? I'll ask. How about the heart by itself? For now, anyway. Or I'll suggest just the object signified by the pet name for their beloved that they've asked me to needle indelibly into their skin. Kitten, tiger, honey bunny. How about if you think about it, just for a little while, and then come back? It's a relief if they pretend I persuaded them to change their minds. They tell me, yes, good idea, they'll come back soon. I know they won't, and better that way. I suppose I should care about the money I miss out on, but it's not about the money. If they insist, I have to ask repeatedly for the correct spelling, even of a very ordinary name, Rachel or Andrew or Joanne, to make sure I get it into my head properly. Then they start to worry if I'm that forgetful or absent-minded, I'll permanently engrave some other name on their skin for all the world to see, including the shocked Rachel or Andrew or Joanne. As well they might. It happened once, although of course it worked out in the end. But there are times, as I've said, when out of weariness I give in and sketch in the wrong name. But I water down the ink and don't push the needle deep enough, so the lettering will fade quickly. By wrong name, I mean the name they ask for. The customer isn't always right. They complain about what I've done. This thing's so pale you can hardly see it. It's unreadable. It looks half-hearted. I can't very well say that's because it is. So I tell them, wait and see. The colour will deepen over time. It won't. I don't have the energy to come up with better excuses. Inking the wrong name on their biceps or over their heart exhausts me. Sometimes it's even painful. For me, not them. Occasionally, I found myself starting to work on the right name, one they didn't ask for. I've caught myself in time, added a curlicue or a bonus flower to disguise the letter that shouldn't be there, and finally given them what they wanted, even though they won't want it for very long. There's a lot of buyer's remorse over tattoos, though less in my shop than others. Once, on a wet Saturday evening, as I was wrapping up my used needles to throw out and packing away the inks, a young man came in and begged me, before I closed up for the weekend, for a heart with Paula underneath it. So I did the heart, a small one, but then I was tired. I wasn't concentrating. On the ribbon below, I tattooed Lauren. He changed colour when he saw it in the mirror. I should have felt terrible, I suppose, but the look on his face told me, as if I didn't already know, that I was right. Of course he refused to pay. I didn't object, how could I? He cursed. What do I do now? It was supposed to be an engagement present. Show her the tattoo, then give her the ring. I said I couldn't fix it straight away, but perhaps he could put a band-aid over it and say it was healing, but slowly, and then come back in 6 months. 6 months? Hide this for 6 months? The door slammed behind him. I waited. 6 months later, he was back, confused, curious, radiant. Paula had eventually got suspicious, pulled off the dressing on his arm, packed her things and left him. So he was planning to propose to Lauren, whom he now realized he'd always loved but didn't dare to admit it even to himself until Paula had gone. It turned out Lauren felt the same as he did. I could have told him that. He couldn't be happier. He wanted to pay me now. Pay me extra, in fact. And he wanted to know how I knew. I shrugged. I don't understand it myself. I suppose it's some kind of sixth sense, or however they call it. He left and turned outside to squint up through the drizzle at the sign over the shop door, blinking as the raindrops caught in his eyelashes. It's not a memorable name, really. The original, suggested by a friend, had been Skin Deep, which was so wrong I had to change it almost at once. My friend didn't think the new name was clever or catchy. Why that? He asked. That doesn't even make sense. It's true though, I said. He didn't understand. He hadn't known me for long, and I didn't explain. But so it is that now on a shiny gold banner spangled with plump, deep red hearts that glisten in the rain, the sign reads in soot-black, old-fashioned lettering, Art from the Heart. I stepped outside after the puzzled young lover, locked the shop door, and murmured a cantrip to keep the place safe till Monday. I waited until he'd gone, and then I too vanished into the night.
Thank you very, very much. What an interesting take. I myself don't have any tattoos, and now I'm wondering if maybe I should engage your services since it would lead me to my future husband or something like that. So thank you again for that. I am going to move swiftly on to introduce our next reader, Ira Mathur. Ira Mathur is an award-winning Indian-born Trinidadian multimedia journalist. I'm sure we're all familiar with that name. Her memoir, Love the Dark Days, published by People Tree Press in 2022, won the 2023 OCM Booker's Prize for Nonfiction and was shortlisted for the overall prize. It was also named among the best biographies of 2022 by the UK Guardian. In 2021, Mathur was longlisted for the Bath Novel Award for a draft novel on Nina Singh. She is Trinidad Guardian's longest-running columnist and journalist and has freelanced for the UK Guardian and the BBC. She holds degrees in literature from Trent University, Canada, and law from the University of London, a master's in international journalism from City University, London, and a diploma in creative writing, of course, from the University of East Anglia in the UK. A body of journalism is available at erasroom.org, and it's important to note that the memoir she wrote, Love the Dark Days, has won the Caribbean's top literary prize, the OCM Booker's Nonfiction, in 2022. So let us join together and welcome Ira.
Thank you so much. In my ridiculous vanity, I forgot my glasses, so you'll see me squinting. This memoir was written partly based in St. Lucia, partly in Trinidad, partly in Tobago in India. So I'm going to be watching that. I thought I would start off with a piece that I wrote based at UB because I was here when there was a festival honoring Derek Walcott. So I'll read from different sections of the book. In the air, through the thick clouds on the rocking plains of St. Lucia, I feel like a late guest at a party. The Nobel laureate had invited me to see him for the weekend about my writing. I wonder whether he was just in need of an acolyte to buoy him up. Perhaps I'm good at the trope, woman, worshipper of language, sensitive to rejection. The invitation followed an interview I did with him when the University at St. Augustine had honored him. I was in the audience, craning my neck to see him, eager to hear him read from his latest work as if he had the answer to all things. Walcott didn't F up the audience or professors as V.S. Naipaul had done. In the same hall, with his supercilious, truncated, pained answers, he hadn't, like Naipaul, sneered at questions from students, I don't understand, or said, school children shouldn't study literature. No, he was all theatre, with his solid build, the leathery slashed skin of a seafarer, the darting green eyes of a sunning iguana. He held back from being intimidating by being alert, alternately jokey and silent. Amidst knowing literary laughter and the academics collectively holding their breath when a student got something wrong, he grinningly shared peccadillos, turned his audience into his private performance, and said the things he always did. The English language is nobody's special property. It is a property of the imagination. It is the property of the language itself, and the Caribbean is full of visual surprise. He took his time, comfortable with saying nothing we had not heard before. Afterwards, he patiently signed old books and new copies of his latest volume. Unlike Naipaul, whose wife Nadira, in the same venue last year, shrieked, "No old books, only new books," like a hawker in a bazaar in Bombay. I sat in the second row and sent a message to his daughter Anna. Trinidad being a small place, our social circles overlap. Our children go to the same school. "Will your dad grant me a brief interview?" During the break, Anna said, "Dad wants to see you." He gestured towards a chair next to him, still signing books, seeming not to notice that I was sitting at the head table facing an audience and flanked by him and the dean of the university. I couldn't look ahead at the audience, nor could I be seen staring at Derek. I still have those photos of me wearing a baby blue cotton dress, showing an abundance of cleavage. It wasn't intentional, squirming like a trapped insect on the stage. Unable to explain my presence there, I touched Derek lightly on his back. "I'm sorry, I have to go." "Go away and have a sandwich while I decide what to do with you," he said. Off I trotted obediently. He still hadn't learned how to speak to women, despite the damning book in which allegations had been made against him, an extract which had damaged his reputation in England when he was a candidate for the Oxford Professorship of Poetry in 2009. In the book called The Lecherous Professor, published in 1984, Walcott had featured in 4 pages of a general account of sexual harassment on American campuses. He had allegedly taken a student from his poetry class to coffee and asked her how she made love with her boyfriend. She had reportedly said, "Why should I tell you? It's none of your business." He allegedly persisted. After all, he was the professor and the gatekeeper of poetry. Did he imagine this was his due and his right? "Would you make love with me if I asked you?" "No," she had insisted. "No way. You're married. Don't you love your wife?" Walcott, thrice married, had reportedly replied, "Love has nothing to do with lust." There was a complaint to the dean. How this was settled was not revealed. I know I should leave, but I stayed, as I always do, having learned from Bari Mummy that patience yields approbation, and sat down on the stairs in the Faculty of Literature, watching the students go by. I wasn't sure why I asked for the interview, let alone why I waited, wondering if it had anything to do with standing by while someone else interviewed Walcott years before, or if I had begun the wrenching process of wondering why I only cared about the people who withheld their approval. What unsaid thing could I say about his Nobel Prize for Literature, and every literary prize worth having? I waited to hear from Anna in my car, parked under the scant shade of a pui tree. I put the car windows down, watched the breeze sweep yellow blossoms across the path to the Faculty of Engineering. So this second bit I've just taken from India, from my childhood in Bangalore. I'm with my grandmother, who's very much part of the story, and we're packing up to leave to come to Tobago, where my sister is 9 and I'm 11. Barimami picks up another photograph of an older man in a garden in a knitted vest, smoking a cigarette. "You know you can die of a broken heart, darlings. This is Papa after 1947. The worst betrayal came from Dickie. He said he would expel any dissenting princely state from the Commonwealth. Papa's hair went white overnight. Light is pouring in without curtains. This is the brightest Rest House Road has been, turning dust into diamonds. The servants are quiet. They're looking at Barimami differently. Khaja's eyes are full of tears. Ansia is staring at her as if to memorize her. How she speaks to them and what they hear are two separate things. They love her. Barimummy's rage is part of what they must accept to survive. Love and violence are one. They nod as she speaks as if she's a preacher at a pulpit. Papa knew it was over when Nehru said he would not accept the divine right of kings. Of course, by then, Nehru was sleeping with Dickie's garish wife, Lady Edwina. She reminded me of a hyena, that woman. I saw her at a party in Vienna at the British Embassy when I was with that damned Saeed. Why didn't Nehru sleep in his own bed? Angel asked. Barimummy said, Dickie often said himself that although they were a couple, they spent more time in bed with others. Angel looks puzzled. I think of monkeys. Those bloody shits, Gandhi, Nehru, Vallabhbhai Patel, Jinnah, Mountbatten, slashed India into bits. They were responsible for 1 million Hindus and Muslims butchering one another on trains on the 15th August 1947. Papa swore in 47 he would never return to Savnur alive. He got the packers into Majid Castle and was off to Bangalore even before the paintings had been taken off the wall, leaving Mama to supervise everything. That's when I took the curtains and brought them to Bangalore. The ragged heap of bluish gold material on the floor seemed to be alive, emanating bright dust. Angel puts her arms around Barimummy. Did he die? Yes, darling. He'd been in bed for a year, suffering from a heart condition. His pulse was shallow. It kept dropping until he was bedridden. Papa, once so active, became sedentary, quiet, smoking cigarette after cigarette and writing letters. One afternoon, Mama smelled burning in his study and found Papa on the floor, his cigarette on the carpet. He'd had a heart attack. For 2 weeks before Papa died, he said he saw his mother's face all over the house, looking at him. He cried out, "My mother is here, my mother is here." His mother and father had been murdered when he was 2 by an uncle who wanted to be the Nawab. That same night, they carried him in a lorry to Kedarabad in Savnur, where generations of Nawabs of Savnur were buried. Only men were allowed at the funeral. Rashid and Wahid kept him company in that car. Miles of streets were lined with his subjects, waiting to receive his body. Every able-bodied Muslim man in Savnur was there. The women went to Savnur to visit his grave a few days later. Majid Castle was locked up. There were no guards. The garden was overgrown and the roses were dead. It was desolate. Some old servants came and cried at Mama's feet, and she couldn't bear to see it. So when an official offered to open up the place for her, she refused, and we took the next train back to Bangalore. Angel and I start crying as the piano was taken away by 4 men, leaving only the piano stool with all the sheet music inside it. Haja hugs Angel, tears falling into Angel's dark hair, her frail hands around Angel's waist. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for that. I just want to say there is such vulnerability in what you've written, and I'm sure everyone in the room can say with certainty, even though there's vulnerability in what you've written, the message is so very important in both of the pieces. So thank you again, Ms. Mitchell. We're moving along really quickly. We would like to welcome, I have a very short bio in front of me, but I imagine this individual is going to give us a much longer piece today. I am going to introduce Professor Kenneth Ramchand. Professor Ramchand is the author of the West Indian novel and its background, and he was the first professor of West Indian literature of the University of the West Indies. He describes himself as a real literary critic. So let's all welcome Professor Ramchand, please.
The story was written in 1988, and it's about a woman who got married 3 times, and at the end of it, decided that there is no man in this world who anybody could love, who deserve to love. I have dug out one part of it, so 2 of the husbands will not be dealt with. And it comes from a letter that she wrote to her good friend, Maybelline. Some people have seen political implications in this. Sorry. There's a story about a woman and the 3 men she married. Dear Maybelline, I have tried to write this letter many times. All the things I want to say, I go over and over in my mind for years. Some of it I write out on some long sheets of foolscap paper that I can't bring myself to show anybody. I'm feeling so ashamed. When I look at the words and letters spiking up and down between the lines, I see desperation and a bitterness that I can barely control. My second husband, he was neither here nor there. And I hate the third one, Napoleon. It was he, with his moral and spiritual values, that sweep in and nearly finish the job that my first husband had started. My first husband, a powerful man. In one hard budget speech, he tells citizens that they have to pay as they earn. A man said he sharpened the axe. He tell them it's because he loved them. And then he said, as if it's a poetry he composed, if loving you is wrong, I don't want to be right. It's those words self that I said to him when he tell me it is wrong to love someone like him so much. At the time when I said it, he didn't reply to me. But he teased my words. And when it suited, he used them like he used everything and everybody. My first husband. He blew me away, mates. I was young then, ardent to give and to belong. The man had returned with fame and a name and an anger that seemed to have greatness in it. If he was leading a march, I would walk in the rain to Shagaramas. If he said, buy local, I threw away all the apples and the grapes and the Betty Crocker cake mix. Mabes, I agree with the young people that a woman should have a cubbyhole of her own in the house. And I halfway believe that if you sacrifice your life, you will not rise again on the 3rd day. But I also believe that a woman has a God-given calling. It's so I stop. That is my upbringing. I thought it would be noble and fulfilling to serve the most intelligent man in the universe. Forget Don Basil Matthews. Although my bottom was not fat in those days, I joined up with the women who formed a brigade, urging on the greater greatness. I joined in the ecstasy at Woodford Square. My heart jumped to his staccato rhythm in the Parliament chamber, hugging my shawl against the cold in there, pretending it was himself I hugging. I stood still among the awestruck men in Lavantie. I went by bus to Harris Promenade, and I listened And I want to get on board with this man as if he is the last train to San Fernando. But I was not no woman tracking him on no green bicycle. I would stand and wait. If I get called to serve, I would soothe his feet with scented ointments. I would trace with sandalwood oil the ascent of the 7 chakras over his consecrated body. I worship the ground the man walked on. I couldn't see that the shades were there to hide his eyes. I didn't know then that he could look you in the face and switch off your voice without hearing anything. I used to fill his silences by making up words. I dreamed to spread words that I dreamed to spread like kisses on his lips. I never thought it would be so unpleasant to kiss that mouth that never do without cigarette or pipe, even at the dining table. At home, his insults were devastating. He didn't think I could think. And I cringed because I couldn't fool myself that he was crazy for my body. Most of the time, he squinch up in his side of the bed with his back to me and never make the mistake of turning in his sleep and touching me. The 1 or 2 times a year that he tried to be private with me, a part of him always holding back. What it is he wants from me? These men never know what they want. We had some good years, Mabel, I can't say no. And though I know I was for him just a hardback handmaiden, I stayed with him. I had begun to doubt that he believed in anything or that he did anything in the name of anything except himself. I stayed with him. I had begun, when he started to look like a bottleneck Zabuka, I told myself, I love him for his brains. I stay with him. When he stick the note on the fridge door that he was leaving me, I didn't run straight to my parents' house, as them Indian women do, and then run back home to take my licks. I flushed the bowl, and I locked myself in the one private space I have in this house. I started doing the mental arithmetic. At the beginning, I was a 10, but he was the 1. And now, if the 1 take off, I will be 0. People have pity on me, and they beg him to come back. No, sorry, Ludu. No apology. Not even a little squeeze of my arm or nipple. Like a dog, I take him back. And just so, I want to cook something special for the prodigal. I call Kamal and I ask if he have any scarlet ibis in the freezer. What's wrong with me? I must be like that crazy woman in the novel by Jean Rees. The man had made love to me, and long after he cooled down, I still drunk with it. So I put him up as usual with the put down in front of everybody. I still riding his tantrums without being dashed to the ground. I made myself get accustomed to the erratic behavior. I can't say I learned to predict when exactly he was going to get lasted vexed. But I noticed it had a safe period. Every month, when I didn't have to hold my breath or try to be invisible. After a while, I could not deny the signs. I should get the hell out of here. He cut himself off from whatever little family he had, like if he was the black sheep that suddenly turned whiter than them. Every day he showed more contempt for the people he could still play upon like a quattro at Christmas time. I watch all this and I say nothing. You know, many nights I went and sleep by June or Muriel when it was full moon. He died like an old woman in a leaking house with a bunch of kobo around his bed. He passed away, but my life had ended long before his. My heart grieving for what he had become and what I had lost, and what in the final weeks I still thought I was losing. But it was over at last, and I was free to go and try again. Somewhere it have a man without a hammer, a man worthy of being served or worshipped or even hoped for. But I find out a man is only a man. I had two after him, and I had no luck. Never be again. I doing the only thing it have for me to leave. I make up my mind to take in religion. I raise up from my bed early in the morning and listen to Jimmy Swaggart. I travel to Mathura and take part in Shango ceremony. I ask Ravi Ji to christen me in Hindu. I attend wedding and funeral at the Catholic Church. I go up on the mount and meditate. You could see me sitting with legs crossed tight at mosque and temple. Everything is nothing to me now. Nothing is not anything again. I come like Marianne. Whole day, whole night, I take in religion. I take in the religion. I take in religion. That's how my father take punching.
Yeah, that was some much needed humor in the room. I heard some of you all cackling in the back there. Very good. I hope the recording picked this up. Very nice. Thank you again so much, Professor Ramchan. I want to move swiftly along as we are kind of pressed for time now. Let's introduce our next reader, Celeste Mohammed. Celeste is a Trinidadian lawyer turned writer and the author of Pleasant View, which won the 2022 OCM Vocus Prize for Caribbean Literature, the 2022 CLMP Firecracker Award for Fiction, and was a finalist for the UK Society of Authors, the Kitterick Prize for Fiction. Celeste holds a Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing from Lesley University, Cambridge, Massachusetts. Her short stories have won numerous awards, including the 2018 Penn Robert J. Dorr Short Story Prize. Today, she will be reading from her non-fiction debut, A Different Energy, Women in Caribbean Oil and Gas, which uses a blend of forms from memoir to essay and interview to dissect one of the world's most male-dominated industries. Let's all welcome Celeste Mohammed.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry for missing the first part of Ken's very entertaining piece. I'm sorry for missing you too, Eva. I was talking. Okay, so I'm going to read from two sections of the book. The first one is written in my voice, I would say, and the second bit I will read is written in the voice of one of the 8 women who I interviewed for this book. So, chapter 1, her story of oil and gas in Trinidad. Oil is to the island of Trinidad what blood is to the body of a man or a woman. The first oil well in the Western Hemisphere was drilled in Trinidad in 1857 by the Merrimack Company. Although that well is often regarded as the start of the Caribbean oil and gas industry in the modern age, one might say Trinidad's petrochemical exports began centuries earlier, in 1595, when the English pirate explorer Sir Walter Raleigh came looking for El Dorado, the fabled city of gold, and was shown instead by the Amerindians the black gold of bitumen or piche at Tierra de Brea, now Labrede village. He used the stuff for caulking his ships, He found our oily deposits to be most excellent good, and melteth not with the sun as the pitch of Norway, and therefore for ships trading the south parts very profitable. Very profitable indeed, but for whom? Everywhere oil is discovered, that's always the question. Who should profit? To whose benefit should this windfall redound? The foreign multinational oil companies, the government, the expatriates, the locals? Not many of us, though, question whether the benefits should flow more to men or to women, because we assume that oil should and does bestow wealth equally, regardless of gender. But that's not true. Oil and gas is one of the largest, most lucrative, and most politically powerful industries in the world, yet it employs very few women, tends to lose the women it does hire, and in developing countries, it disproportionately burdens women. Ask anybody working in the petrochemical industry and they will tell you it's a man's world. Academics have used more nuanced phraseology, referring to the profoundly gendered nature of oil work. I saw this with my own eyes while growing up in San Fernando, the industrial capital of Trinidad and Tobago during the 80s and 90s. Throughout my secondary school years, I had many friends who lived on camp, one or other of the oil company residential camps along the southern oil belt of Trinidad. Then there were other friends who had a parent working in the oil but didn't live on camp, although their family still got to drive past security and go up to the club and play at the pool. But in either case, the parent whose employment allowed access to oil's privileges was always a man. Nobody's mummy was ever the one working in the oil or on senior staff. It was always the father. Male hegemony in the oil and gas industry was accepted as normal back then when I was growing up, and I'm not that old. And we didn't even wonder, where are the women? We just accepted that it had to be so. And here's another interesting irony. We, my contemporaries and I, constitute the notorious OBG, the oil boom generation, who was born during Trinidad's oil boom of the 1970s, but grew up in the 1980s during the deepest economic recession in Trinidadian history, and as teenagers experienced the resulting attempted coup of 1990. Trauma upon trauma upon trauma. The message we received was that oil is a kind of liquid Zeus, a fickle god who gives generously to male providers and then rafts away capriciously, leaving their women either scrambling to make ends meet at home or exiled in America, cleaning toilets and babysitting other people's picnic. Now, as the mother of a daughter, living through this crucial decade of action where the UN has set a 2030 deadline for the achievement of gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls, I do wonder how many OBG girl children, like myself, might have aspired differently and made different life choices if we had known that all this time there were indeed women succeeding in the oil and gas industry. I'll stop there with that chapter and I will move on to the first of the women featured in the book. And this chapter is really kind of, I would say, memoir-like, in that I wrote it, but after interviewing her, but I really did try to channel her story and her essence. Dig Deeper, My Leadership Journey by, the person is Arlene Chow. My name is Arlene Chow. I'm 65 years old and just this month, July 2023, I retired after 40 years in the oil and gas industry. My mother never wanted me to be a geologist. She said, "Dies man walk." And in truth, I learned early o'clock that part of the job description for a woman in this industry is having to constantly prove that you can do the job as well as a man. Without hesitation, the bedrock of my success has been my family and the values which were instilled in me growing up. I am the last of 8 children, and we are all accomplished in our own fields: law, accounting, psychology, engineering, even a nun. We were a close-knit bunch, sticking together like Lagley, we were told, who learned very early to share, to cooperate, and to consider each other's needs. I remember if you went to eat and there was only one piece of meat left, you had to ask, anybody want a piece? It was even my brother who financially put me through university. And that family support has always been with me. So there was poverty and the stain of illegitimacy upon her life, but she was bright in school. She was training to be a teacher, but had to stop when she married my dad, as in those days you couldn't teach and be married. My dad's situation was even worse. He had run away from China at 12 years old to escape an abusive stepmother. After walking for days, digging up and eating raw potatoes to stay alive, he found his uncle who happened to be leaving for Trinidad. So he hopped on the boat too, and arrived here with neither a cent nor a word of English. He, a Buddhist, still going by his Chinese name Chow Ka, met my mom, a staunch Roman Catholic, when she was teaching him English. For a while, after they got married, money was so tight that my mom only had one good dress. It was white, and she washed it every week to wear again. My mom really pushed us academically. I think it was because of her childhood. She saw education as a way out, so we never would have to experience her kind of poverty. When I was 5 years old, we got our own house in Sangre Grande, and I went to Kunapo Roman Catholic School. To this day, I still say I'm from Grande. We had a cocoa store buying and selling cocoa, coffee, nutmegs, copra, and tonka beans. I loved going to the store to help my father and mother who worked in the business. My father grew most of our vegetables in the garden at home. As a child, I thought everybody got their food that way. At the toughest times in my career, the values that kept me going were those values I learned at home. Study hard, have a strong work ethic and discipline, show respect, and make the best of what you have. My mother was big on respect because she grew up being disrespected. She also instilled this: no job is beneath you. She even used to make us go outside and clean the canals in front of the house. Despite all the focus on academics, she taught us that all work is professional and that none of us was too precious for hard manual tasks. My mixed race, mixed religious background really shaped who I am and how I approach life. I grew up in the 70s during the Black Power Revolution. I recall feeling like my family was being attacked from both sides. I was in a cocoa store one day when my Chinese father was yet again being harassed by a black man who thought Dad had no right to be a businessman in this country. Enraged, I shouted at the man, "What do you know? My mother is black." And it was my father who had to stop me from going further. Another time, we went to Pigeon Point, a private beach in Tobago, with a pass that said James Chow and family. The lady at the gate looked pointedly at my mother, who was in the front seat, and refused us admission. The message was obvious. She didn't belong. Dad had to intervene and say, "She's my wife." Those incidents stayed with me, so I don't prejudge people on race or religion at all. In fact, every All Souls at my parents' graves, me and my siblings say the rosary and light joss sticks to honor my parents and their shared love in the face of so many cultural differences.
Thank you so much. Let's all put together our hands again for Colette Mohammed and for paying such perfect attention to the timers that I held up. Thank you. We are coming to the end of our readings with our final writer today who's going to speak. I would like to introduce Mr. Anthony Tony Deal, a name I'm sure we are all familiar with. Mr. Deal was the first Caribbean recipient of a first-class honors degree in journalism from Carleton University, Ottawa. In 1974, he was a Herbert Humphrey Fellow in Planning and Resource Management at Boston University. He also studied message design at Stanford University. Mr. Deal has held various portfolios, including television producer at the Office of the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Communications Advisor to the World Health Organization in Barbados, Corporate Secretary and Head of Corporate Communications at the West Indies Cricket Board, and consultant to the Pan American Health Organization, the World Bank, and CARICOM. In 1993, he started a new humorous weekly column in the Barbados Nation, which has been running for more than 28 years and is carried by the Jamaica Gleaner and many other newspapers in the English-speaking Caribbean and elsewhere. His end tag, Tony Dial was last seen, has become his trademark sign-off for the weekly column and is the title of one of his books, a collection of 76 of his articles published in the major Caribbean newspapers between April 1993 to present. He has also published Blades of Grass and Glory, a collection of his cricket columns over the past 30 years. Let's all welcome Mr. Anthony Tony Dial.
Ah man, I just talk loud. Anyhow, folks. First of all, I wanted to thank Ken. I had already done about 28 years or 29 years of doing a column every Saturday around the Caribbean. Never lost any day, any Saturday. And Ken told me you have to put it in a book. So if I say anything here that's not right, he did. Anyhow, one thing I have learned in Trinidad is that if you stay in one place long enough, they will either thief you, or the same thing will keep coming in front of you time after time after time. I'm going to read for you an article I wrote in December 4th, 2002 about the Port of Spain General Hospital. 22 years later, I'm not sure if you realize it, but the Chinese firm that started in 2010 back it up, and the name was Shanghai. So understand why. But we're now reading that the Port of Spain General Hospital is gone through. The Chinese leave. And now back again, the Port of Spain General Hospital block on target for March or maybe April 2025. So this is why I've written this one, and it's called Bad to the Bones. First, there were ghost gangs in the unemployment relief program. They took their money and disappeared into the fourth dimension, never to return. Then there were ghost workers drawing salaries for painting the National Housing Authority buildings. They moved from vanish to vanish as quickly as you could say, Caspar the Friendly Ghost. Now the nightmare before Christmas, and it was when I wrote it, continues. As if the health system in Trinidad was not scary enough, the Trinidad Guardian has reported the advent of a phenomenon that makes the Port of Spain General Hospital more like the setting of a Stephen King novel or a Western set in Tombstone territory. In its edition of Saturday, November 30th, 2022, reporting on the reopening of the Accident and Emergency Department of the Port of Spain General Hospital, the Trinidad Guardian's headline read, "Casualty back in operation with a skeleton staff. At first, I thought it was a hoax, or even an attempt to delude the public with, what Trinidadians call trying a skull. However, in reading further, I realized that the paper was serious, and I was almost moved to write a letter of commendation to whoever had conceived of such a brilliant idea. Skeletons are ideal for such an operation. First of all, security will be boned up rather than beefed up. Normal human beings, as well as the people who frequent hospital casualty departments, would not be able to breach the hospital's defenses or gain entry unlawfully, since only the people in charge would have skeleton keys. Those of us who complain about the Northwest Regional Health Authority, its board and management, and all the allegations of corruption, misspending, stealing of supplies, and the covering up of malpractice and negligence, would no longer have to worry. One sure outcome of employing a skeleton staff is transparency. Make no bones about it, a skeleton staff guarantees transparency. Skeletons might be numbskulls or boneheads, but they are too smart to steal food from the cafeteria or towels from the laundry. Now, granted that you cannot pin anything on them, they still do not steal body parts and give it to private institutions, since they know they'll be easily discovered. Additionally, by using a skeleton staff, the problem of the overcrowded mortuary will be ended. After all, skeletons are people, with the outsides off and the inside out. Skeletons may have some difficulty in standing up for themselves. However, by the same token, they do not bow to pressure or knuckle under despots, doctors, or dictators. Most of them work hard, although some of them might be lazy bones. On the downside, they might be messy. One of them went to the cafeteria and ordered a cup of coffee and a mop. Another refused to work at the hospital because its heart wasn't in it. One refused to attend the welcome party put on by the Ministry of Health because it had no body to dance with. And when one reached very late for work and tried to lie, explaining that it was chased by a dog, the supervisor said, "Don't try that, I could see right through you." On the plus side, skeletons are easy and cheap to maintain. Unlike the present hospital staff, they require no meals or meal allowance. In fact, they don't use the cafeteria food because they have no stomach for it. If they take anything at all, it's soup with plenty of body served on bone china. They never lose their cool or get angry the way previous staff of nurses and doctors did. No shouting and shutting down for them. In fact, nothing gets under their skin. They're very studious and always boning up for exams. Even the few who might be tempted to get angry and make outrageous demands eventually back down because they don't have the guts to fight. On Sundays, they stay on the job instead of going to church. They have no organs. Instead of using the government service to send all their Christmas cards and run up major expenses, which the government must pay, They send their mail not by Pony Express, but by Boney Express. They don't require any transportation allowance since, like vampires, they travel by blood vessels. They don't take coffee breaks, they take coffin breaks. Unlike ghosts, they don't make mistakes or boo-boos. There's no question that the use of the skeleton staff of the accident and emergency department would reduce the present excessive demand on the limited resources of the hospital. Most children would be like start sheet, they're scared stiff. Most adults would hesitate since unless they suffer from gallstones or coughing fits. On the other hand, doctors would be in paradise having more time for their private practice, and the Ministry of Health would have more money to spend on the really important things, such as attending international conferences. I would really like to see the idea of employing staff extended to other ministries. Most government ministries already have the basic resources and need only the political will to implement the new strategy. They all have skeletons in their cupboards. However, I understand that most of them prefer mummies to skeletons because they like to keep everything under wraps. The leader of the opposition, that was my friend Bastille in those days, can also do with a skeleton since he has fallen out with everybody that he knows. What seems to have happened is he did not keep up his payments to his sleeping partner, the devil, and was repossessed. Tony Dial was last seen at Casualty, casually interviewing the staff with questions like, "What do you call a skeleton doctor?" That is, your doctor. "What do you call a skeleton doctor?" I used to work with bones. Bones. And where do skeletons go for a swim? The Dead Sea. Thank you all very much.
What an incredible way to wrap up our lunchtime readings. Thank you so very much to everyone that came out. Thank you, Tony, for that. I just want to mention something. Probably I have a special interest in Tony's work. I've been exposed to it at secondary school. Actually, my English teacher made us read your column every week. And that was many years ago, but it's always new, it's always refreshing to hear your delivery and your ability to mix the humor with real and critical issues. So thank you again. I just want to ask everyone to hold on a little bit because Mr. Dial has so graciously agreed to donate 2 of his works to the Alma Jordan Library. So if I can please ask Mr. Dial to come up again, and our library representative will receive your books.
I used to go to school here too. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So thank you again, everyone. Thank you for coming out, for staying up over the time and giving us your full attention. Campus Literature Week continues. We have recordings that will go up on our website tomorrow. And of course, all of the recordings, all of the sessions are available on the YouTube channel as well. Thank you again. Have a good afternoon. And we look forward to seeing you at next year's activities. Take care.